Welcome to the channel, my friends. Today I want you to imagine this. What if a single lesson, a single shift in the way you think could change the rest of your life? What if everything you've been taught about money, success, and security was only half the truth, and the other half was the key to freedom? This isn't just another motivational talk or a story you'll forget tomorrow. What I'm about to share has transformed millions of lives around the world, including my own. It comes from one of the most powerful books ever written about money and mindset, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And if you stay with me, you'll discover ideas that can completely reshape the way you see your future. Think about it. We grow up hearing the same script over and over again. Study hard, get good grades, land a stable job, save a little, and someday, if you're lucky, you'll retire with enough to live on. But have you ever stopped to ask, is that really the path to financial freedom? Or is it the path to being stuck in a cycle you never escape? This video is not just about a book. It's about a new way of thinking, a shift that separates those who struggle paycheck to paycheck from those who achieve wealth, independence, and freedom. I'm going to walk you through the exact lessons Robert learned from the two most important mentors in his life, his poor dad, who followed the traditional rules of success, and his rich dad, who broke those rules and built real wealth. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why so many people stay trapped in financial stress their whole lives, and more importantly, how you can break free from that trap. If you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever wondered why you work so hard but still feel like you're not moving forward, then this is your wake-up call. So sit back, open your mind, and let's dive into the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Because what you're about to hear could be the spark that changes everything. And before we jump in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss the lessons, strategies, and stories that can help you build the life of freedom you deserve. Let's begin. Robert Kiyosaki's story begins with something unusual, something that gave him two very different windows into the world of money. Most of us grow up with one set of financial beliefs, usually from our parents. But Robert? He had two fathers, two powerful voices shaping his mind, and the contrast between them became the foundation for the lessons that changed his life, and later, the lives of millions. On one side was his poor dad, his biological father, a man of education, discipline, and principle. He was a teacher, highly respected, a believer in the traditional path of success. Study hard, get a stable job, climb the ladder, and retire with security. He valued grades, promotions, and paychecks. But despite all his education and his steady career, he struggled. Month after month, paycheck after paycheck, he worried about bills, about making ends meet, about keeping up with life's expenses. To him, talking openly about money was impolite, even shameful. On the other side was his rich dad, not a blood relative, but the father of his best friend. Unlike poor dad, Rich Dad had no fancy degree. He wasn't a scholar, and he didn't work for the government or chase job titles. But he had something far more powerful: financial intelligence. He owned businesses, invested in opportunities, and most importantly, understood how money really works. Where poor dad believed you should work for money, Rich Dad taught that the true key to wealth is making money work for you. Now picture young Robert, just a boy, standing between these two worlds. Two men he'd loved and respected, each giving him advice. One said, study hard and find a safe job. The other said, learn how to create jobs. Don't chase security, build wealth. One warned him that money is the root of all evil. The other insisted, no, the lack of money is the real root of all evil. Imagine how confusing that must have been. Two father figures, two opposing belief systems, both pulling at him in different directions. But this contrast became his greatest gift, because Robert could see right in front of his eyes the consequences of each mindset. He saw his poor dad stressed, overworked, and constantly worried. He saw his rich dad calm, confident, and secure about the future. It was in this tug of war between two philosophies that Robert began to realize something profound. Education alone isn't enough. Knowledge about money, how it flows, how it grows, and how it works, that is what separates the financially free from the financially trapped. And it was in listening to these two voices, and slowly choosing which one to follow, that his journey toward financial wisdom truly began. If you're finding this story powerful already, Make sure to like this video and subscribe, because in the next part, we'll dive into the exact conflicting beliefs these two men shared and how they completely reshaped Robert's destiny. From the very beginning, Robert Kiyosaki's life was like standing at a crossroads, with two signposts pointing in completely opposite directions. On one path was his poor dad, the man who raised him, educated him, and constantly repeated the advice so many of us have heard since childhood. Go to school, get good grades, find a secure job, save money, and climb the ladder. Poor dad's philosophy was built on stability. To him, success meant having a steady paycheck, benefits, and eventually a pension or retirement fund. He believed that the more degrees you had, the better your chances of success. Money, in his eyes, was something you worked hard for, something to be cautious with, and above all, something you should never risk. His advice always circled back to the same formula: job security equals peace of mind. But standing on the other side was Rich Dad, offering Robert a completely different map of the world. Rich Dad's voice rang with boldness and confidence. He said, "Job security is an illusion. True freedom doesn't come from a paycheck. It comes from understanding money and making it work for you." Instead of teaching Robert to save for decades, Rich Dad pushed him to think about how to multiply money through investments, businesses, and financial education. Rich Dad believed that relying on a single job was dangerous because it tied your future to someone else's decisions. He taught Robert that the wealthy don't focus on working harder for a bigger salary. Instead, they focus on creating systems, buying assets, and building streams of income that flow in even when they sleep. For Rich Dad, every dollar wasn't just money. It was a soldier that could go out into the world and bring back more dollars. The clash between these two sets of beliefs couldn't have been stronger. Poor Dad saw money as something scarce, something to protect and hold on to. Rich Dad saw money as abundant, a tool, a resource to be multiplied. Poor Dad said, "Play it safe." Rich Dad said, "Take smart risks because fortune favors those who dare to learn and grow." Now imagine being a young boy, hearing both of these voices every day. Which one would you follow? The one that promised safety or the one that promised freedom? For Robert, it wasn't an easy choice. He loved both men, but over time he began to notice the results. His poor dad, despite his intelligence, was always worried about bills. His rich dad, though less educated, was always relaxed, confident, and in control of his financial future. It was in this sharp contrast that Robert began to see the truth. Success isn't just about how much you earn, it's about what you learn. And while formal education can give you knowledge, financial education gives you power. And this realization led him to the next big lesson, one that changed everything: the painful but eye-opening reality of the rat race. So before we dive deeper, make sure you're subscribed and have liked this video, because the next part will reveal the trap that keeps millions of people working hard their whole lives and never truly getting ahead. As a young boy, Robert Kiyosaki found himself in the middle of a strange puzzle. On one side, he saw his poor dad, a man he deeply admired. His father was smart, educated, respected in the community, and dedicated to his teaching career. But behind the pride and professionalism, Robert noticed something else: constant stress about money. His poor dad often worried about paying bills, complained about rising expenses, and lived paycheck to paycheck. Even with all his education, he never seemed at peace when it came to finances. On the other side, Robert would spend time with his rich dad, the father of his best friend. Now, this man wasn't nearly as educated, and he didn't have the prestige of being a government worker or a teacher. But there was something different about him, something Robert couldn't ignore. Rich Dad always seemed calm. He spoke with confidence about the future. He wasn't stressed when unexpected expenses came up. Instead of worrying, he looked for opportunities. This contrast fascinated Robert. How could it be that his real father, the man with a stable job and a degree, was constantly under financial pressure, while his friend's father, with far less formal education, seemed to control money rather than be controlled by it? One day, young Robert finally asked the question that had been building inside him. "Why are you so confident about money? Why does it never seem to scare you?" Rich Dad smiled and gave an answer that would stick with Robert for the rest of his life. "Because I understand how money works. Most people don't. They spend their whole lives working for money, but they never learn how to make money work for them." That single sentence was like planting a seed in Robert's mind. Suddenly, he realized that money wasn't just about earning and spending. It was something deeper, something you could master if you understood the rules. This was the turning point. He began to look at his poor dad's struggles in a new light. He could see the cycle of stress, the dependence on a paycheck, the lack of freedom. At the same time, he was drawn to the calm assurance of his rich dad, who seemed to have unlocked a secret that others couldn't see. This moment of confusion, of standing between two opposite worlds, sparked Robert's curiosity. He made a decision that would change his destiny. He would learn from Rich Dad. He would study money the way others studied math or science. He would uncover the hidden rules that the wealthy seemed to know but no one else was teaching. And from this decision began a journey that would reveal one of the harshest truths about life and money, the reality of the rat race. Before we explore that next lesson, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the insights ahead that could help you break free from the same financial traps that keep so many people stuck. Most people believe they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do in life. They study hard in school, graduate, get a decent job, and start earning money. It sounds like the perfect formula for success, right? But Rich Dad explained to Robert that this so-called formula is actually a trap, a cycle millions of people fall into without ever realizing it. He called it the rat race. Here's how it works. You get an education because society tells you that's the key to success. With that education, you land a job. At first, that job feels like a victory. Finally, money is coming in. But with income comes expenses. Rent, food, transportation, and soon enough, a lifestyle that matches your paycheck. Then life adds more. A car loan, credit cards, maybe a mortgage, and suddenly debt becomes a permanent guest in your life. Now, with more bills to pay and debt piling up, you work harder. You put in more hours, maybe chase a promotion, hoping the bigger paycheck will solve everything. But what happens when you earn more? Your lifestyle inflates. You buy a better car, a bigger house, nicer clothes, and the cycle begins again. Income, expenses, debt, harder work. It's a wheel that keeps spinning, but no matter how fast you run, you never get ahead. Rich Dad described it perfectly. Most people spend their lives working for money instead of making money work for them. They chase paychecks, but they never build assets. They pour years into jobs they don't love, only to end up exhausted, stressed, and dependent on a paycheck that barely covers the next round of bills. It's like being stuck on a treadmill. You're moving, sweating, grinding every day, but you're not actually going anywhere. For Robert, this was a life-changing realization. He saw his poor dad trapped in this cycle, an intelligent man respected in society yet constantly worried about money. And then he saw his rich dad, who had stepped off the treadmill by building businesses and investments that earned money even when he wasn't working. That contrast burned the lesson into Robert's mind. Education alone won't save you if it doesn't teach you how money works. And this is where Rich Dad's lessons took a powerful turn. He began teaching Robert the difference between assets and liabilities, the secret to escaping the rat race once and for all. Before we get into that crucial lesson, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe, because what's coming next isn't just theory. It's the practical knowledge that separates the wealthy from everyone else. Meet John. At first glance, his story looks like the picture of success. He worked hard in school, landed a decent job, and finally began earning a steady paycheck. At the start, things looked good. He rented a small apartment, drove an affordable car, and managed his expenses carefully. For a while, John felt like he was winning at life. But then came his first promotion. His income jumped, and suddenly he felt like he could breathe. What's the natural next step? Upgrade his lifestyle. John moved into a bigger apartment in a nicer part of town. He bought a new car, this time on loan because after all, he deserved it. With more income, he ate out more often, traveled, and bought the latest gadgets. His expenses began climbing almost as fast as his income. When another raise came along, John thought this would finally give him financial security. But instead, his expenses rose again. He traded his apartment for a mortgage on a larger home. He upgraded his car once more. He even started using credit cards to fund the lifestyle he felt matched his new income level. To everyone around him, John looked successful. Nice house, shiny car, stylish clothes. But behind the scenes, he was stuck in a financial treadmill. This is lifestyle inflation, and it's the silent trap of the rat race. Every time John's income grew, his expenses grew right alongside it. In fact, sometimes his expenses outpaced his income because of debt and interest payments, and instead of buying assets that could generate cash flow, he was collecting liabilities, things that took money out of his pocket every month. So when John faced unexpected expenses, like medical bills or a job scare, the stress hit hard. Despite years of working harder and earning more, he was still living paycheck to paycheck, just like before, only now with bigger bills and higher stakes. Rich Dad used stories like John's to show Robert the reality most people live in. The problem isn't just about how much you earn, it's about how you manage what you earn. Without financial education, raises and promotions don't buy freedom. They just buy a more expensive cage. And that's why the next lesson was so important. Rich Dad taught Robert that the real difference between the rich and everyone else comes down to one simple idea: knowing the difference between assets and liabilities. If you're ready to understand that core lesson, the one that can break the cycle forever, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because what comes next could completely change how you see money. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that you don't have to go to work. Not because you won the lottery, not because you quit, but because your money is already working for you. That feeling, that independence, is what Rich Dad defined as true financial freedom. Most people confuse wealth with a big salary or flashy possessions. But Rich Dad made it clear to Robert, wealth is not about how much money you make. It's about how long you could live if you stopped working today. In other words, could your assets pay for your expenses month after month without you lifting a finger? Think about it. If your rent, bills, groceries, and lifestyle are covered entirely by income from investments, rental properties, dividends, or businesses you own, then you are free. Free from the stress of a paycheck, free from the fear of losing your job, free to spend your time how you want, not how your employer dictates. That's wealth. Rich Dad explained it in simple terms. When your passive income from assets equals or exceeds your monthly expenses, you've crossed the line into financial independence. At that point, your money is no longer something you chase, it's something that works for you. You're no longer in the rat race. You've escaped. And here's the key. Financial freedom isn't about having millions sitting in the bank. It's about designing your life so your assets keep producing cash flow, whether you're working, traveling, or even sleeping. The wealthy build this foundation early, while the rest keep running in circles, trading time for money and never getting ahead. For Robert, this lesson was revolutionary. He saw clearly why his poor dad remained stressed despite decades of work, and why his rich dad was calm and confident. One was tied to a paycheck, the other was tied to assets, and this definition of wealth became Robert's guiding star. It's what pushed him to start learning how to buy assets, reduce liabilities, and design a life where freedom wasn't a dream, it was reality. In the next part of this journey, Rich Dad will break down exactly how to get there by teaching Robert the first steps of financial education. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. So if this vision of financial freedom inspires you, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because the next lesson might just be the one that shifts your mindset forever. Rich Dad often said, if you want to be rich, you must first learn to tell the difference between an asset and a liability. And while that sounds simple, he explained to Robert that most adults live their entire lives without ever truly understanding this distinction. So what's the difference? An asset is something that puts money into your pocket, month after month. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. Not complicated, not filled with financial jargon. Just that simple. Take an example. You buy a brand new car. It feels great, it smells great, and for a while it gives you pride. But the moment you drive it off the lot, it starts losing value. Every month you're paying installments, insurance, fuel, and maintenance. Does this car put money in your pocket? No, it takes money out. That makes it a liability. Now imagine instead you buy a small rental property. At first it might feel like a burden, with a mortgage and responsibilities. But if that property earns you rent every month that's higher than your expenses, guess what? It's putting money into your pocket. Over time, as the loan decreases and the property value rises, that income becomes even more powerful. That's an asset. Rich Dad painted this picture even clearer with the story of two families. Family A earns a good income. Every time they get a raise, they celebrate by upgrading their lifestyle. Bigger house, nicer cars, more credit cards. Their expenses climb with their income and their liabilities multiply. On the outside, they look wealthy, but on the inside, they're trapped in debt, living paycheck to paycheck. Family B, on the other hand, takes a different approach. Instead of rushing to buy bigger homes or luxury cars, they focus on building assets, investments, rental properties, stocks, and businesses. Their expenses remain stable while their assets quietly grow in the background. Eventually, their assets begin generating enough income to cover their lifestyle, freeing them from dependence on their jobs. The contrast is striking. Family A looks rich, but is secretly stuck. Family B may seem modest at first, but they are slowly building true financial freedom. Robert realized that this was the heart of Rich Dad's teaching. Wealth isn't measured by how many things you own. It's measured by how many assets you control. And the ability to distinguish between the two is the first real step to escaping the rat race. This lesson became Robert's compass. Every financial decision he made afterward boiled down to one question: is this an asset or a liability? And in the next stage of his journey, Rich Dad revealed why our schools never teach this life-changing lesson, and why that gap keeps so many people stuck in financial struggle. Before we dive into that truth, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because the next insight will shake the foundation of everything you thought education was supposed to prepare you for. One of the most powerful lessons Rich Dad shared with Robert wasn't about numbers, charts, or even investments. It was about mindset, because at the end of the day, wealth begins not in your wallet but in your mind. Most people, when faced with something they want but feel is out of reach, immediately shut themselves down with the phrase, "I can't afford it." It sounds harmless, maybe even responsible, but Rich Dad warned that those 4 words are some of the most dangerous words in personal finance. Why? Because the moment you say, "I can't afford it," your brain stops working. You've closed the door on possibility. You've told yourself that the conversation is over. The rich, however, think differently. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," they ask, "How can I afford it?" That one small change flips the brain into problem-solving mode. It forces creativity, pushes you to seek opportunities, and opens doors where others only see walls. Rich Dad gave Robert countless examples. Imagine a new business opportunity, a property to invest in, or even something as simple as an educational course that could change your life. The poor mindset says, "I can't afford it," and walks away. The rich mindset asks, "How can I afford it?" and starts brainstorming, maybe through partnerships, creative financing, or cutting unnecessary expenses. Robert realized that this wasn't about recklessly spending money. It was about training his mind to look for solutions instead of excuses. Poor Dad often taught him to be safe, to avoid risk, and to say no when money seemed tight. Rich Dad, on the other hand, taught him to stretch his thinking, to view every challenge as a chance to grow stronger and smarter. Over time, Robert saw the difference. People who constantly said, "I can't afford it," lived smaller lives, boxed in by their own words. But those who asked, "How can I afford it?" found ways to expand, to try new things, and to create wealth where others saw none. It's a simple mindset shift, but it carries enormous power, because the way you talk to yourself about money determines whether you see opportunities or only obstacles. And this lesson connects to the bigger picture: financial education. Without it, even the best mindset struggles to thrive. And that's why Rich Dad revealed the harsh truth about our school system, a truth Robert would never forget. Before we dive into that, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because what comes next will show you why so many people, despite years of schooling, never learn how to truly master money. Thought for nines. What if the only thing standing between you and financial freedom isn't your income, your education, or your luck, but one simple emotion? Fear. That fear whispers, "What if I lose my money?" and shuts your brain down before you've even begun. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert asked the exact same question, and Rich Dad's answer changed everything. Losing money is part of learning, but not doing anything because you're afraid guarantees you'll never grow. Today I want to show you how to face that fear, use it as fuel, and build wealth step by step with a practical, repeatable plan. Picture a young Robert, nervous and unsure, asking, "What if I lose my money?" Rich Dad didn't scold him. He smiled and taught him a different truth. The poor are paralyzed by the possibility of loss. The rich accept loss as tuition for knowledge. When you treat every risk as a classroom, suddenly failure stops being an ending and becomes feedback. That shift, from panic to curiosity, is where real investors are born. Fear shows up as paralysis. It keeps you watching from the sidelines while opportunities pass by. You'll tell yourself you'll start when you have more, and 10 years later you'll wonder where the time went. But there's a smarter path. Break risk into small, controlled steps so that learning happens without catastrophe. Here's a structured plan. The exact kind of framework Rich Dad would approve. Track and control your cash first. For 1 month, write down every rupee you spend. Awareness transforms anxiety into agency. When you see where money leaks, you can redirect it toward learning and small investments. Start tiny, then scale. You don't need a fortune to begin. Buy 1 share, invest 50 rupees in a low-cost index, or offer a small service on the side. Small bets let you learn the mechanics without risking your life savings. Learn every day. Read, listen, find mentors. Knowledge reduces fear. The more you understand markets, taxes, and business fundamentals, the less mysterious and scary the world of money becomes. Build assets first. Spend less on liabilities and direct any surplus to things that can generate cash flow. A micro investment, a side business, or a course that increases your skill and income potential. Reinvest your wins. When an investment returns even a little, roll it back into new assets. Compounding isn't magical, it's consistent. Small reinvestments over time beat sporadic, high-risk gambles. Stories give this plan life. Rich Dad told Robert about a man who started 5 businesses and failed each time. People called him a fool. He didn't stop. On his 6th venture, everything clicked. The lessons from those failures were the scaffolding for success. That's the pattern you should expect. Fail, learn, adjust, and grow. Practical risk management tips matter too. Diversify so one mistake doesn't sink you. Set boundaries. Decide in advance the maximum you're willing to lose on an experiment. Do your homework. Never invest in what you don't understand. And surround yourself with people who've done what you want to do. Mentorship shortens the learning curve and shrinks fear. Most importantly, change the story you tell yourself. Replace "I'm too scared to lose" with "What can I learn if this doesn't go as planned?" Reframe setbacks as data, not disasters. Celebrate tiny wins. A first dividend, your first sale, your ability to resist an unnecessary purchase. Because confidence compounds too. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be curious and consistent. Begin with 1 disciplined step today. Track your spending for a month. Set aside a small learning fund and invest your first small amount. That single action rewires your identity from passive consumer to active investor. If this resonated, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode where we break down specific, low-risk ways to start investing with as little as you have today. Drop a comment. Tell me 1 small step you'll take this week. Start now. Learn fast, and remember, courage is simply action in spite of fear. Imagine standing at the bottom of a mountain, looking up at the peak. It feels overwhelming, almost impossible. That's how building wealth seems to most people. Too big, too complicated, too far out of reach. But Rich Dad showed Robert that wealth isn't built in one giant leap. It's built step by step, with practical actions anyone can take. And today I want to share those exact steps with you so you can start climbing your own mountain of financial freedom. The first step is tracking your expenses. Think of it like shining a flashlight in a dark room. For 1 month, write down every single rupee, dollar, or pound you spend, from your rent to that cup of coffee. You'll be shocked at how many leaks you discover. Awareness is power. Until you know where your money is going, you can't direct it toward where it should be. The second step is to start small. Too many people wait until they have enough money to invest, and in doing so, they lose precious time. Rich Dad taught Robert that small beginnings compound into big results. Buy 1 share, put a little into a savings account that earns interest, or start a small side hustle. The size doesn't matter, the habit does. Step 3 is to learn daily. Knowledge is the antidote to fear. Read a few pages of a financial book, listen to a podcast, attend a seminar, or watch videos that expand your understanding. The more you learn, the more confident you become, and that confidence transforms into smarter decisions. Step 4. Build assets before luxuries. Assets are things that put money into your pocket. Rental properties, stocks, businesses, or even skills that increase your earning potential. Too many people buy liabilities first. The car, the gadgets, the big house. and then wonder why they stay broke. If you prioritize assets, luxuries will eventually pay for themselves. And finally, step 5, reinvest your profits. This is where the magic happens. When your investment pays you, don't rush to spend it. Put it back to work. It's like planting seeds. The more you plant, the bigger your harvest. Over time, this snowballs into real financial growth, the kind that doesn't depend on your job or your paycheck. This plan is simple, but it's not easy. It requires discipline, patience, and consistency. But think about it. If you commit to these 5 steps, where will you be 1 year from now? 5 years? 10 years? The truth is, the earlier you start, the sooner you escape the rat race and step into true financial freedom. So here's my challenge to you. Tonight, take the first step. Write down your expenses for the day. Tomorrow, set aside a small amount, and no matter how little, and put it toward your first investment. That's how the journey begins. If this video gave you clarity and motivation, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this message. And let me know in the comments, which of these 5 steps will you start practicing today? Remember, wealth isn't built in a day, it's built daily, and your journey starts now. Imagine this. You wake up every morning to an alarm you hate, rushing to a job you don't love, just because you're afraid of not having money. Fear keeps millions of people trapped in the same cycle. Work, earn, spend, repeat. And then there's greed. That desire to buy the latest phone, the flashy car, or the dream vacation even when the wallet screams no. These 2 emotions, fear and greed, silently control how most of us live our financial lives. But here's the truth the rich understand. Money itself isn't the problem. Emotions are. Fear whispers, "You'll go broke if you take risks, so stay safe in this job forever." Greed shouts, "Spend now, impress others. You can figure out the bills later." Most people obey these voices without even realizing it. That's why they stay stuck. Now, let's flip the script. The wealthy? They feel the same emotions too. Fear and greed are part of being human. But instead of being ruled by them, they've learned to control them. How? Through knowledge, discipline, and a clear vision of freedom. When fear rises, they don't run. They study, they analyze, they build strategies. When greed tempts, they don't blindly spend. They invest in assets that grow their future instead of draining their wallets. Think about it. Imagine channeling that same energy you use worrying about bills into learning how to make money work for you. Imagine saying no to impulse spending today and watching that money grow into financial freedom tomorrow. That's the mindset shift. The rich don't chase money out of fear or greed. They use money as a tool to buy the ultimate prize, freedom. Freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom from stress. So the question is, are your emotions controlling your money, or is your knowledge controlling your emotions? The answer could be the difference between staying stuck or breaking free. If this message hit you hard, don't just stop here. Hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful lessons, and keep watching, because your journey to financial freedom starts with mastering yourself. Picture this. A new coffee shop opens in your city. Most people walk in as customers, buy a latte, snap a photo, and leave. That's the consumer mindset. Spending money, enjoying the product, and moving on. But an investor? They see something completely different. They ask, who owns this place? How much do they make per cup? Could this be franchised? Could I invest in something like this? That's the difference between consumers and investors. Consumers spend. Investors grow. One trades money for instant satisfaction. The other multiplies money for long-term freedom. And here's the tough truth. Most people live their whole lives only as consumers. Every paycheck disappears into bills, gadgets, clothes, and upgrades. Nothing left to build wealth. Now imagine shifting that mindset. Instead of just asking, how much does it cost? Start asking, what if I owned it? See opportunities everywhere? The phone in your hand? Most see it as a device to scroll. An investor sees Apple or Samsung stock. That online store you shop from, a consumer buys. An investor thinks, how can I build my own? Even something as small as your daily coffee. Consumer spends $5. Investor asks, what would happen if I put that $5 into a stock ETF or my own side hustle every day? This isn't about never spending. It's about balance. Spending with awareness while also building ownership. Because the wealthy don't just buy products, they own the companies that sell them. That's why money flows to them, while it drains from everyone else. So here's a quick exercise. For the next 24 hours, every time you pull out your wallet, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting as a consumer or an investor? That tiny shift in awareness can rewire your brain to start seeing opportunities instead of only expenses. The world is full of owners and buyers. The question is, which one do you want to be? If this opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe for more life-changing lessons, and keep watching, because your financial freedom depends on training your mind to think like an investor, not just a consumer. Let me tell you a secret most people don't want to hear. Wealth isn't built by luck, shortcuts, or lottery tickets. It's built by discipline, habits, and patience. The truth is, money doesn't grow overnight. It grows like a tree, slowly, quietly, almost invisible at first, but unstoppable if you keep watering it. Here's where discipline comes in. The wealthy live by one simple rule: pay yourself first. Before rent, bills, or shopping, they take a piece of their income and invest it. That's the seed. And once it's planted, they never stop watering it. But a seed alone isn't enough. You need habits to nurture it. Track your progress even if it feels small. Celebrate those tiny wins. The extra $100 saved, the first dividend payment, the side hustle income. Because every small step is proof that your tree is growing roots. Most people quit because they can't see progress fast enough. But the disciplined, they keep going day after day because they know patience turns small actions into massive results. Think about it. A tree doesn't sprout fruit on day one. It takes seasons. Rain, sun, storms, and time. Your wealth is the same. At first it feels slow, maybe even pointless. But stay consistent, and one day you'll look up and realize that little seed you planted years ago now provides shade, fruit, and security for your entire life. And here's the real power. Once the tree grows, it doesn't just feed you, and it feeds generations. Discipline creates habits. Habits create consistency. And consistency over time creates freedom. So ask yourself, are you watering your tree daily, or are you cutting it down every time you spend recklessly? If this message inspired you, don't let it stop here. Like this video, hit subscribe, and keep watching, because your habits today decide your wealth tomorrow. Here's the truth most people miss. Success isn't just about making money. It's about building a mindset that never stops growing, taking action even when it's uncomfortable, and bouncing back stronger every time life knocks you down. That's resilience. The greatest wealth builders in history all share the same secret. They didn't wait for the perfect time. They started with what they had, where they were. And as they built their wealth, they didn't just keep it for themselves. They gave back, they created opportunities, they left a legacy. Because true success isn't just about what you earn, it's about the impact you leave behind. Wealth at its core is freedom. Freedom to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, and what kind of life you create. Money is just the tool. Freedom is the real prize. And here's the final lesson. Success isn't a straight line. It's a journey of continuous learning. Every book you read, every skill you master, every failure you turn into wisdom, and it all compounds just like interest to build a life that's unshakable. So wherever you are right now, don't wait for tomorrow. Start today. Take that first small step, stay consistent, and never ever give up. Because the only way you lose is by quitting. If this message lit a fire in you, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful lessons, and keep watching, because your freedom story is just beginning.